All right, guys, good morning. Although, in all likelihood, you are probably not watching this in the morning, but you know. All right, we ended last time looking at the three R's of kind of FDR's plan to deal with the New Deal. So, again, just to review that real quick. So, relief is providing immediate short term needs, okay? Food, money to keep your house, things like that. Recovery, how do we get the people out of the Great Depression? And then reform, how do we tackle the causes to make sure something like this never happens again? All right, so we're going to go into kind of that alphabet soup. So we're going to look at kind of like a lot of acronyms for these policies that FDR begins to pass. The first thing that he's going to do is he's going to shut down the banks. Okay, the banks have a little holiday, they have a little break. And what this does is allow the banks to be closed, and it allows them to go in and be inspected. Okay, they're going to have stricter regulations on policies. Remember, no more easy credit, just handing out loans to whoever. And then once they were considered healthy by the government, they could be opened back up. The main goal for this, okay, is we wanted people to be confident in the banks again. Remember, some people lost their entire life savings and they never wanted to put their money in a bank again. Again, in order to boost the economy, okay, money needed to be back flowing through the banks. Okay, another way to protect the people and to protect the banks, FDR creates the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation through the Glass-Steagall Act. Okay, this is more widely known as the FDIC. We have this today, so if you ever go to your bank, cash your paychecks, anything like that, you'll see that most of the banks, like on the window, on the door, it says that they are going to be protected by the FDIC. So, if something like the Great Depression were to happen again, basically what this does is this backs up or insures your money up to $5,000 during that time period, and today it is $250,000. Okay, so if something were to happen, banks had to close, your money would be protected up to that amount. Okay, so again, this is an insurance policy. This is going to help people trust the banks again. Okay, and again, I want you to be thinking as we go through these, do you think these are relief, recovery, or reform? Okay, so is this providing immediate relief? Is it helping people to get out of the depression, or is it tackling causes of the Great Depression? Okay, so really good kind of practice, because this will help on your assessment at the end of the week. As you're writing these down, guys, I want you to write relief, recovery, or reform next to each of these highlighted terms. All right, the next thing FDR was going to tackle is going to be the stock market. So remember, people were buying on margin and buying stocks and gambling with the stocks without money that they really had. So remember, this is one of the things that caused the stock market to inflate and then, as a result, crash when people didn't have the money to actually pay for those stocks they were buying. Okay, so the Security Exchange Commission is going to be created. This is going to help kind of be the watchdog. Okay, it's going to make sure that buying on margin isn't happening on the scale that it was, and make sure that people are having fair stock exchange practices. Okay, so again, next to this, right, do you think that's relief, recovery, or reform? Okay, so in the first set of notes that we talked about with FDR, we know that he believed in this idea of deficit spending. You had to spend money to make money. Okay, one way FDR was going to do this is he's going to take the country off the gold standard. Now remember, the idea of the gold standard is something that we talked about all the way back in Unit 1. Okay, the idea that we could only print as much money as we had physically backed up by gold. Okay, now again, in order to stimulate the economy, we had to have money flowing through the economy. So FDR is going to take the United States off the gold standard and print as much money as he needed. Okay, now again, you can't print too much money because it'll be a situation like Germany in World War I where the money becomes useless and more valuable as burning material, firewood, things like that. So you have to be careful. You can't just print money to solve the problems because that decreases the value of the money. But he is able to print more money and have more money flowing through circulation. Okay, so prices begin to go up, wages begin to go up slowly, so people can spend money to make money. All right, we grouped these two together, the National Industrial Recovery Act and the National Recovery Administration. This is very similar to what we saw during World War I when we asked factories and we asked industries to work together, and we had the labor board working together to make sure people didn't go on strike because we wanted things to be able to be produced quickly for the war effort. This is very similar to that. Okay, these two acts are basically covering industry, and they want to improve business relationships. Okay, again, this idea was to promote industrial growth, get things producing again, get people back in jobs. Some of the issues it tackled were labor issues that we've been talking about since Unit 1, child labor, shortened work hours, overall improving conditions to make people want to work in the industry. Now, this is the first time we begin to see. Now, we talked about FDR is going to be very radical compared to people like Herbert Hoover and Calvin Coolidge that we've talked about. So again, he's taking the government and the role of president further than anybody has in his position. So some people get afraid of that, and again, they're going to accuse that of being communist. Okay, FDR is getting too powerful, and that's not really the way. So again, when people are nervous about things during this time period, remember we talked about the Red Scare just happening, oh, that's going to be communist. Okay, another very similar thing, this ties in right with what we just talked about, the Wagner Act, or the National Labor Relations Act. This allows labor to form labor unions. Okay, so it's protecting their rights. Okay, so that ties in right to what we're talking about. We want people to be able to fight for better working conditions and the things that we've been talking about for Unit 1. Employees were not allowed to interfere, so they could not do all of those tactics. They couldn't use scabs if people struck, all of those different things that we talked about. Okay, so again, you think that is relief, recovery, or reform. Okay, then we're going to look at the TVA. Okay, so this, and we actually see this because there are some in the western part of North Carolina. There's still projects that you can go see today that were created from this organization. This is, again, so remember we talked about a lot of FDR's projects are twofold. Okay, so this is meant to provide some type of service, and it also gets people working again. It's creating jobs. So this is creating dams. So just like we talked about with the Hoover Dam, okay, that builds up the water and then allows that hydropower to promote electricity, a clean water source. Okay, so as you see, that moves through Virginia, North Carolina, Tennessee. Okay, and a lot of this area was also impacted when we talked about the Dust Bowl. Okay, so this uses for water sources like that. Okay, and another part of the alphabet soup is going to be the Agricultural Adjustment Act, or AAA, AAA, however you want to say it. This is specifically meant to help out farmers. Okay, now again, we talked about overproduction was an issue. Okay, and it had to be regulated. So now remember, the Dust Bowl is happening. Farmers are already hurt. So what they're doing is they're paying farmers actually to not produce anything. Okay, that allows the prices to go back up. And in the meantime, the farmers are going to be paid not to produce. So to get that balance back in the idea of overproduction. And this still happens today. When I was growing up in New York, I was related to dairy farmers, and a lot of times they would be paid not to produce milk or to pour out their milk to help regulate the prices of milk. Because milk is already pretty cheap as it is, but when it's overproduced, that price kind of drops, and that hurts the dairy farmers. So a lot of times for an example, dairy farming, they would be paid to pour out the milk and not to sell it. Okay. Another level of that is going to be the Food Stamp Act, and this is giving away surplus food. Yes. So you would get like a food coupon that you could come back and redeem. And this is the first stepping stone to what we see kind of like welfare food stamps today. But remember, this is the first time that the federal government is getting involved in the people's lives like this, or giving direct relief and direct support. Okay. Now, while FDR wanted to help the people, he did not want to have the people become reliant on the government or just take the money and not really contribute anything. So remember, going back, FDR's policies are going to be twofold. Okay? You're going to provide some service to the people, to the land, but we're also going to create jobs. So one way he's going to do that is he creates the Civilian Conservation Corps. And what's really cool, if you go to national parks around North Carolina, I've been to one in Virginia. It's really cool because they're built by men who are participating in the Civilian Conservation Corps. So you really see the lasting impact of these projects that were created. Okay? When we talk about the Civilian Conservation Corps, this is targeted for young men. Okay, so this is going to be a lot of manual labor jobs, ages 18 to 25. Okay, so the different things. Okay, so this provides jobs, allows them to make money. And then they're going to do things like reforestation, planting trees, soil conservation. So they're tackling the issues like the Dust Bowl, flood control, road construction. Again, all meaningful things to help improve the country. And this also takes them out of the urban labor markets. So remember, we talked about everybody. We saw those pictures of the men standing in line trying to get work just for the day. This is going to take that large group of young men, take them out of the cities for competition, okay, and allow other people to take those jobs and provide jobs for them kind of working, in more rural areas. Okay, so remember, go back through, okay, relief, recovery, reform. I want you to be thinking that as we move forward this week, okay? So we kind of wrapped up with the alphabet soup. And again, guys, we are just touching very lightly on some of the policies that FDR has passed, okay? And remember, his first 100 days, he's passing multiple acts, okay? Tomorrow, to kind of wrap it up, we're going to look at how people begin to oppose. So we hinted on a little bit with the NIRA and the NRA, how people didn't like how much power that was giving FDR. But tomorrow we'll look at kind of the opposition and people who did not like what FDR was doing or thought he was doing too little or not enough.